Good morning and welcome to day 32. I think we got a few folks over here who want to talk about some Senate bills, I think. So, Senator Kirkpatrick, tell us about your bills, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two bills this morning under modified structured rule, Senate Bill 16 and Senate Bill 18. Senate Bill 16 is the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact Act, which makes Georgia the 25th state in the medical licensure compact and allows us to share data across state lines. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Senate Bill 18 is the Direct Primary Care Act, which allows private contracting between physicians and patients outside of insurance.
You have no questions.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Kendrick.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I bring to you H.R. 72, which is the first bill on the modified open rule. This is a resolution encouraging Georgia to host the largest startup pitch competition. And currently, New York is number one. And you will see on line 36 through 40 that Georgia is just asked to partner with private entities. So this will not cost the state any money. And we put a suggested amount in there of $15 million just to make sure that companies put enough in there so that we could be number one of hosting of this pitch competition. I know that there have been companies that have already been asking for this pitch competition, like Comcast when the Economic Development Committee went on their tour. So companies are waiting on this, and hopefully I can get the consideration of the Rules Committee, and there is an amendment that you all should have. And all the amendment does is make two technical changes. It updates Georgia as being the number one state to do business from 3 years to 6 years to make sure that we're accurate. And then it removes the reference to us being finalists for the Amazon headquarters. So those are the two amendments.
Chairman Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, could you clarify for me again the recommended funding that's on line 38 of your resolution would come from the private sector? You're not requesting any state funding whatsoever, is that correct?
No state money whatsoever. It's
Very
just
good.
a suggestion for the private entities, yes.
You have no other questions.
Thank you.
Senator Burke. Senator Burke and I share a district all except for where I live. Tell us about your bill, please, sir.
Just for everybody who wasn't sure, I vote for him, but he doesn't get to vote for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got Senate Bill 67, which is in the middle of the page in the modified structured rule. This is a Department of Education funding bill to advance some capital outlay funds in schools damaged by fire and natural disaster. This was related to some damage we had in southwest Georgia with the hurricane. Be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate everyone's consideration.
You have no questions.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Kennedy.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you and all the members on the committee this morning. I wanted to ask consideration for Senate Bill 122, which is fifth from the bottom on the first page, modified structured rule. This deals with the motor vehicle franchise law and proposed changes to our law. Something I didn't know, Mr. Chairman, before working on this. I assumed that the relationship between the automobile manufacturers and the automobile dealers was purely a subject of contract between those two stakeholders, but in fact it's not. It's a subject of Georgia franchise law. Georgia, like many other states around the country, recognized a few decades ago that there was a real imbalance between those two stakeholders, and so the state stepped in with franchise laws. So occasionally from time to time those laws need to be rebalanced where things get a little out of balance. I'm happy to report that the two stakeholders started working on this last fall, and up through and to and including actually a few days ago finally agreed to what is proposed in the bill that we have before you now. So the manufacturers and the automobile dealers have agreed to these proposed changes. What's a little unique about this bill, unlike most of the things we deal with as legislators, This part of the code that's being proposed to be changed really affects those two stakeholders, not exclusively, but a whole lot more. Unlike most of the laws, affect Georgians and consumers, this really affects those two stakeholders. They've agreed that these terms are fair and appropriate going forward, and it's our opinion that that is the case too, and I'm hoping that the House will see it that way as well.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Y'all have a great day.
I've been waiting for your call since Monday. Senator Gooch.
If we had better broadband in Georgia, you would have received it. I actually came by your office this morning, Mr. Chairman, but you were busy somewhere outside the office. But so was Chairman Tanner, but I got here a little early. I have two bills today I'd like to ask for your consideration. SB 17, it's one of the same bills that you have already seen. Actually, both of my bills have already been through the House, almost identical. SB 17 deals with the local telephone co-ops. There are 4, primarily down in South Georgia, that would allow these 4 small telephone co-ops to deploy broadband services if they choose. SB 66 is the 5G, also known as small cell technology bill that you have already passed out of the chamber, and it passed your committee from the Senate version day before yesterday. And it basically standardizes the process of applications and the fees and all the requirements for the local governments to authorize these small cell antennas to be deployed in the public right-of-ways.
Representative Tanner.
Mr. Chairman, this is more to you. I just want to tell you I appreciate you letting me know that he hasn't called you back either, because I've been waiting since last week. Thank you.
Oh, me. I thought an in-person meeting would be better than a phone call, It's more personal.
Chairman Martin, has he called you?
No, sir. We just linked up personally on that. Directly face to face, didn't we, Senator?
Absolutely. You don't have to worry about all those telephone distortions and all that stuff going on. So face to face is the best way. Absolutely.
Senator Gooch, we had a nice discussion on this the other day in committee. I'm not going to belabor it for us, but isn't it fair to say that I still have reservations here, but this was a grand bargain that was struck between a group of people, ACCG, GMA, and the industry. And while I still have questions, it appears the bill has a great deal of support, if not mine, and it'll move forward. But would you just relate again for me that if I happen to be right, sometimes I'm right once a year, that on some of this, that you're willing to work with folks. I guess that's being serious about it, that it's a big bill. It's doing a lot of things. If some of the things that we've brought up that we're not able to get to at this point, your commitment is to make that right for the cities that are affected. Isn't that true that we've had that discussion?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I will give you that promise, my word. This is the same bill that you'd already passed in the House, as I said, and you voted for, Representative Martin. And every now and then you'll pass a bill that has unintended consequences in it, and we look at those a year later or 2 years later, and we make changes. But I don't foresee any of those issues coming up, but none of us are perfect, so we'll just see what happens. I believe this is a good compromise between the local governments and the industry people. And when you get all those folks together in the same room and they're holding hands at the same committee meeting, testifying at the same time, somebody's done a lot of work, and there's been thousands of hours put toward resolving those differences from last year. This bill, I believe, is as close to perfect as you're going to get, considering the difficulties and complexities of these type issues. But thank you.
You have no other questions.
Thank you, sir. I'll see you sometime today, Mr. Chairman, if you'll let me. And you too, Chairman Tanner.
Senator Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Bill 80 removes language that's in the general statute that says that if the Georgia Music Hall of Fame or the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame was not self-sufficient, it could not receive any appropriations. The Georgia Sports Hall of Fame is still in existence in Macon. We use an organization by New Time to buy the building, and we have put in 1.5% of our hotel motel tax to run it. And what I'm asking is, it is a Georgia Sports Hall of Fame. We don't appoint any of the members. They're all appointed by the state. And we ask that we can change this language so that we can go to the appropriations process and ask for money to run the state's own Sports Hall of Fame.
You have no questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Martin.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. I have two bills today. The first one is SB 8, which will create a specialty license plate for Atlanta United, and it will benefit the Atlanta United Foundation. And SB 156 is the first part of that bill is a bill that the House passed out that Representative Taylor carried, dealing with the division of insurers here in Georgia, setting up a better framework for that makes it easier to do business in Georgia. We also added a bill that I had in the Senate to try to streamline some things in the Senate and hopefully towards the end of session as well, that corrects a Scrivener's error from last year in a bill that I carried for a notice of reduction of coverage. It creates, the way we wrote it last year, the whole bill was capitalized, and this just corrects that so that only the title is capitalized.
Whip Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was busy last night reading the Senate bills that were coming over from from them, and I didn't get a chance to see the game. Did Atlanta United win last night?
Well, it's complicated, Mr. Whip. They won the night, but they lost the war. They lost the aggregate because it was a two game tie, but they did win last night 1-0.
All right. Thank you for keeping me updated.
You have no other questions.
Thank you.
Senator Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to be back with you. I was first yesterday and last today. I just want to make sure y'all remember me. I got a couple of bills on the sheet, starting with Senate Bill 72. We discussed this one yesterday morning, dealing with a variety of game and fish regulations and legalizing air guns and a couple other things. And per your request, Mr. Chairman, DNR is good with the bill as it sits in your committee.
With both the air and the suppressors?
Yes, sir. Okay. Any other questions on that one, or you want me to explain it a little more?
No, you have no questions.
Okay. Senate Bill 73 deals with POAB. If you'll remember, last year we did a $5 fee on pretrial diversions. What this does is simply allows the clerk of court to send that money directly to POAB if they so choose to do so.
Okay, Whip Kelly has a motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the bill sponsor and you, Mr. Chairman, spoke about Senate Bill 153, and I wanted to put some clarifying language in about local business licenses.
On 153?
On 153.
Okay, okay.
I know y'all spoke about that, so I'm going to make the motion to recommit that back to committee just to fix that one issue.
Okay, all right.
There's a motion second. Is there an objection? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the senator.
Yes, sir.
On SB 73.
Yes, sir.
Just had a little pause with the words, if they so choose. We've had a lot of problems here in Georgia with, we voted to do one thing and a lot of people did not choose to send the money where we agreed it would go.
Yes, sir. So the way it currently happens is the clerk of court is required to submit that fee to the county fiscal office, and then the county fiscal office then turns around and submits that fee to POAB. This simply allows the clerk of court to submit it directly to the POAB if it makes it easier on them. And it's actually been worked on with the clerks of courts. They support it, and they wanted that option. So the money is still going to go where it's supposed to go. It just gives the clerk of court an option. Instead of sending it to the county sending it to POAB, This would just allow the clerk of court to send it directly to POAB.
Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the author of bringing out SB 153 that passed the House twice and it got hung up over in the Senate on sine die last year.
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that this is a good bill for consumer safety as far as dealing with those companies that do clean up after devastation to people's homes from either suicides or some criminal act that's left the debris and such?
It is. I would agree with the chairman.
I want to thank you so much for bringing this so that we can handle it in the Senate and it not get held up the way it.
I understand and look forward to working with you a little more on it.
You have no other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your indulgence. We'll see you.
Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got Senate Bill 176, I believe is the number. It's a retirement bill for the employees' retirement system. This bill requires that anybody that buys in for credible service, that they pay full actuarial cost. Now, since we passed this bill,
is that 117 or 176?
Pardon?
You're talking about 117, not 176.
Now, 117 is, I don't think it's available now, is it? I think it's still in committee.
It's still in committee.
All right, we've got 176, which
176 deals with the employees' retirement system.
It does, but I think you were describing to us 117. 176 deals with part-time employees.
You're exactly right. Yeah. I did have it crossed in my mind. I thought we got that in 117, but 176 does deal with part-time employees, and this requires whenever they bring a retiree back on, that the employer contributes to the retirement system, the employer's portion and the employee's portion, and that employee accrues no additional credit. This is designed to get some extra funds into the retirement system. It takes away a little advantage that these employers have because they do not have to make the retirement contribution for the employer, nor do they have to pay the insurance. The insurance is paid out of state health. If we require them to make the contribution of the employer's portion and the employee's portion, they will still have a financial advantage because they will not have to be covering the insurance cost, and the insurance is more than retirement.
Chairman Martin.
Chairman Black, in here. You mentioned that, and I guess that's the question I'd have. I mean, what we would be doing in the bill is if they hire if they hire a retiree back into, they would, while they're working, they would accrue no additional service toward their requirement.
That's right.
But we're going to make the department pay into the retirement even though they're not getting any additional service. We're just loading. I think where that is right now, I think that would cost state government $4 to $5 million a year based on the number of people that were hired in the last time that we had it. It seems like we're just loading money into retirement. You bring up another interesting question that I think the Rules Committee might want to look at is when these employees, is it not true, when these employees come back to work after they're retired, their health care is being paid for out of the ERS system. But when they come back to work, even though they're working, the ERS system is getting no funds and they're still paying the health care. So it seems like what this bill is doing is trying to get you to pay your retirement in to cover the health care. It would seem to be more straightforward, Mr. Chairman, if we'd rework the bill and just put the cost of the insurance on the department and leave the retirement system out of it. Isn't that, I guess I'm making a statement more than a question, so I'll say, isn't that true? That if we're trying to write this and do it, it seems like we're convoluting it by charging retirement when they're not earning retirement in order to pay health care that they should be getting from the department. Isn't that true, Mr. Chairman?
I believe the gentleman believes that to be true.
He does.
It's my understanding that the health insurance on these retirees is paid out of the Department of Community Health. And it takes the health care cost out of the budget.
Senator, currently, as I understand it, if somebody comes back to work after they've retired and they're drawing retirement benefits, that they are no longer paying into the system. The employer is no longer paying into the system, but they're also not accruing any additional service benefit. And what this bill would do is would require the employer to pay the employer and the employee share, but the employee gets no benefit, no accrued. All you're doing is basically making the employer pay into the retirement system to subsidize the payment to the other employees that may soon retire. Is that basically
This is designed to supplement the retirement system, yes.
And you think that because a lot of the employers hire these people as part-time folks because they can actually do so less expensively because they're not having to contribute, is this going to discourage that practice so that they'll just go hire full-time employees?
It's my judgment. Well, first off, they don't come back as full-time employees. If they come back full-time, then they have to.
Well, I understand, but you could hire two.
Right, you can hire two part-time. There's 49%. They can work up to 49%, and they can come back on. And when they come back on, it's a big financial advantage to that department. Now, if this bill passes, it will still be a financial advantage to the department because they will not have having to pay the insurance out of their budget. And it will boost the retirement system. And that was the design. We've got a serious problem with our unfunded liability in our retirement system.
Chairman Martin.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on that, I think the gentleman, the senator makes the point is, I think arguably the department, if they're hiring the people back and they're working for them part-time as an employee, should pay the health care part. That should be loaded into the cost of that. But I think I agree with the Rules Chairman. It is somewhat troubling that if they're not accruing any additional benefits to charge them the retiree department, that would cause a problem. And further to what the senator said, isn't it true that what we're doing here is just sort of covering up the issue that the retirement system may in fact be underfunded, and that's something this legislature can address head on if and when we so choose.
I think that's a policy issue we need to address.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it my understanding when this part-time employee comes out of retirement and is reemployed, and this reemployment is a public employee, they're employed by a government entity funded by the taxpayers, that now the taxpayers will pay both the employer and the employee's portion of what their retirement benefit would have been. That particular employee is not accruing any additional benefit, but that money that the taxpayers are now paying both sides of the equation will go into the fund to shore it up for other employees. Is that? That's what the goal of the bill is.
Suppose this is taking money out of one pocket, putting it over into the other.
And my concern is the pocket is the taxpayers.
But like I said, this is designed to benefit the retirement system, which our retirement funds have a serious unfunded liability problem.
And without belaboring the point, you have a companion bill, I believe, that's 175 that should probably be on the consideration calendar on Monday, which is a companion bill that it hadn't come out of committee. But if it does the same thing for TRS?
Right.
Okay. You have no more questions.
Thank you.
Senator Hufstetler.
Thank you, Chairman. Just came from my House subcommittee and was glad I was able to get over here in time. I've got one bill on today, Senate Bill 55. It's a departmental bill from the ERS requesting that they be allowed to offer an annuity on those employees' 401k portion of it. It's permissive. They have people that would like to have a guaranteed payment that would like for their funds to be used for that. The state fiscal office has said that there is no fiscal impact on this. Certainly be glad to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by Senate Bill 67, Senator Burke's bill there.
Representative Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being late. I was at one of Chairman Smith's insurance subcommittee meetings this morning, but I'm asking for Senate Bill 202.
Well, he was here on time.
Was he? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, you don't ever come to your subcommittee meetings. You just trust your subcommittee. So, but I understand Senator Ligon has not been in to explain Senate Bill 202, which simply adds for the title insurance industry the ability to give title insurance on the business personal property for large buildings. Oftentimes it's heavy industrial equipment. You can't tell where the building stops and the equipment begins, and it allows the title insurance industry to provide clean title to both the building, the real property, and the business personal property. It came without any objection from anyone. Makes perfect sense to me, and I'd like hope the favorable consideration of the Rules Committee. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions. Chairman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'd like to put my name by House Resolution 403, number 3 from the top, and it was the bill for Representative Howard, convenience store, handicap access.
Chairman Powell.
I'd like to put my name beside Senate Bill 122, the Motor Vehicle Franchise Act.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, under modified open, I would like to invoke the Harrell rule and put my name beside all of those.
So noted.
Mr. Stevens.
Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Put my name beside Senate Bill 16.
Chairman Smith. This is Chairman Smith.
H.R. 368, second from the top, Interstate 14, urge Congress to fund this. It'll go from El Paso to Augusta, and if you start in Georgia around Columbus, Macon, and Augusta, all the counties and cities in that corridor have introduced resolutions and approved this urgent resolution. Oh, and by the way, Representative Williams, I trust my committee chairs.
Chairman Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Smith, that Interstate 14, it goes from Columbus to Augusta.
Yes, sir.
Does that kind of follow the old Fall Line Freeway?
As far as I understand, it's pretty close to it.
Yes, sir.
Part of that interstate has already been constructed in Texas, and we just want to encourage Congress to fund it all the way across.
So kind of from Columbus, Macon to Augusta?
Yes, sir.
The Fall Line? Okay,
right.
Thank you.
Chairman Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had no issue getting in touch with Senator Gooch, so if you would consider Senate Bill 17 and 66, I'll get him to come see you.
Well, from now on, I'll just let you make my calls for me. All right, let's set the calendar. I told you yesterday we'd try to do it for today and for Monday, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So we're going to set the calendar for today, and then on Monday we will meet and set the calendar for Monday and also probably the next legislative day. HR 403. It's on. SB 8. It's on. SB 80. It's on. SB 16. It's on. SB 18. It's on. SB 73. It's on. And that's the calendar for today. We are adjourned.